Hi YouTube, today I'd like to show you my Crystron materiactor deck profile for the post-April ban list and show you some combos too that go along with it. So this has been something I've been messing around for a while because the materiactor engine and the new support has been really good, and I've been seeing it as an opportunity to pivot into Cherubini to enable the Crystron cards, as well as insulate the Crystron combo from various hand traps. And the upshot of playing the materiactor engine is that it plays around things like Lancia and Droll to an extent, which means that your Crystron cards aren't the sole engine that's being used. So over Azamina and Kastura, they're really good at going second, but this engine offers consistency, which is also really important, and being able to play through hand traps better. So we'll get right into it. We have, for our main deck, 3 materiactor Gigadra. We have a Zeptwing and an X-Raptor and a Tune Warrior for our normal monster. So I think Gigadra is the most important normal summon. The really nice thing about running the materiactor cards is that they discard, just like the Azamina cards, which is why they're beneficial in with alongside Crystron, because Crystron cards operate mostly in the graveyard. So having a discard engine is really important. X-Raptor does a similar job to Gigadra, but it's dead if you draw it alongside Tune Warrior. So Gigadra is actually better because it benefits from drawing Tune Warrior at the same time. And Zeptwing is your payoff. It's going to be a monster reborn of your Tune Warrior, and it searches for a materiactor card on summon as well. And this all works alongside the rank 3 that we're running, but it's a fairly small engine. And going second, you can think about siding this out for 6 going second cards. But what's really nice about this in this particular deck is that we're already running Terrortop in Crystron with the Tactomborg brick. So there'll be a combo that shows that Terrortop is actually much better when used with a materiactor engine as a starter. And so there's upshot from that. And so basically there's going to be like 7 starters for this engine. That is it for the materiactor part of the deck. You can think about running the spells as well, but I think they were a bit too bricky in testing, and they weren't starters by themselves. We have 3 Crystron Smiger, because it benefits the most from being discarded for the cost. We have 3 Sophophir, because of a similar reason. It's really good when it's in the grave and discarded for cost. We have only 2 Solvador, and 2 Tristaris, 1 Vicevern, and 1 Citri. This is pretty standard as far as Crystron ratios go. Maybe like 1 or 2 cards that change depending on the build you're using. But I've been really liking this so far. As long as you're being smart with your Tristarises and recycling them, then you shouldn't be having a problem with just running 2. And of course we have the best Crystron starter inclusion. Just open this, plays around things like Droll. So it's really important that you see this and you play a low deck count just to see this as a push. And of course a 1 Crystron cluster and Foolish Burial for consistency in this build, with sending any of the Crystron cards that you might be missing. That's going to be it for the engines in this deck. Then for the non-engine, we have 1 Full Lost, because I only have 1 currently, but you can think about running more. 3 Ash Blossom, 3 Droplet, which I think is still really good in Crystron, because they love to send for cost. 3 Imperm, because it plays around talents, and it's just generally really good still. And the Cross Out, Call By, and Talents, kind of 3 staple cards this format, which haven't been disappointing for me at all so far. You always want to keep a hand trap in, so like going first, I like to side out 2 Imperms, but keep a Cross Out, which is in case they draw Imperm, because it's so popular. And now we have a side deck, which consists of 3 Lancia, 3 Droll, which both of these are going to be really important for different decks. Go into Alliance Insight as well. We have 3 Frost, a Duster, a Dimension Grounds, and Sanctum, which will go with the Frost. These of course you put in for different decks going first, and Duster for going second. And lastly we've got 3 Meows, which I think will be really important in the next format, against things like Memento and Ignista Manus. Lastly, we have the extra deck, which consists of 1 Crystron Quarion Gandrax, 2 Eliskeletors, because one's required for your combo and one's required for follow-up, and 1 Dawn Dragster, 1 Samurai Destroyer to play around Nib, 1 Coral Dragon, which you can make with Tune Warrior plus a level 3, and 1 Chambara, which comes up fairly often for OTK potential. We have just 1 Materia X-Guard because it may enable the Materiactor combos. We have Bamboozling Gossip Shadow, which is really good installation for our Crystron combo. When we already have a Crystron starter, we can go into this instead of Cherubini. We have the Cyber Dragon Infinity with Nova and Typhon, which is important for going up against things like Caesar and Rise-Your Detonator. We have Cherubini, of course, SP Little Knight, which is good installation for our combos, and 1 Clockwork Knight to be able to make our Terrortop push into an SP push by linking Takatomborg into Clockwork Knight, and then linking Terrortop and Clockwork Knight into SP. But that is it for the deck profile. We're going to have a look at how we can turn our Materiactor engine into our Crystron combo now. Now for our first combo, we're going to see what we can do with just 1 Materiactor Gigadra and a random card to discard. So of course we'll start by normal summoning the Gigadra, using its effect to discard the random card, and that will special summon our Tune Warrior from our deck. From here, if this random card you discarded was actually a Crystron starter like Smyger, then we can sequence this a bit differently, because we can play around and draw here with this particular starter. So we're gonna overlay into our Bamboozling Gossip Shadow, and then we have protection from draw, or force our opponent to preemptively Lancer us in this situation if we then banish Smyger for the inclusion and then do the Crystron combo. But let's say that the random card we discarded was actually non-engine, then we can actually still do our full Crystron combo. So we're gonna overlay these two into our Materiactor X-Guard. X-Guard effect will detach the Tune Warrior. Make sure you detach this one in particular, and that will special summon out our Zeptwing from our deck. Zeptwing will use use the effect in both parts to add our Materiactor X Raptor from deck to hand, and special summon the Tune Warrior from the graveyard. Again, depending on the card you discard and the other cards in your hand, you have the option here to synchro into a Coral Dragon to help break the opponent's board by discarding to destroy an opponent's card and then link it off to make an SP, for example. But here what we're going to do is link off into a Cherubini, and we can use the Cherubini effect, targeting one of your cards to send a Smyger from deck to grave, increasing one of your cards' attack by Smyger's attack. But that's not important because we're going to use Smyger in graveyard, banish it, to go ahead and add inclusion from deck to hand. Inclusion will activate, and we pretty much get our full Smyger line. If you know the pure Crystron combo from normal summoning Smyger, we're going to follow a very similar line to that. So we're going to add our Sulfador from deck to hand, activate Sulfador, special summon itself, popping inclusion, and now Sulfador can activate, sending 2 Crystron cards from deck to grave. This will have to be our Tristaros and our Cluster. Next, we're going to use the graveyard effect with inclusion, banish it to Monster Reborn our Tristaros. And we're going to then synchro into our Eliskeletors, make sure it doesn't point to Cherubini Zone because it can't be destroyed by card effects then. And Eliskeletors will add our Cluster from graveyard to hand. From here, we're going to banish our Tristaros to pop the Eliskeletors and summon 2 Crystrons from the deck. This will be our Tristaros and our Solfafnir, and Eliskeletors will reborn our Tristaros from banished. The next step depends on what kind of end board you want to finish on, but what I like to go for is to synchro off these two into our Dawn Dragster, and then we just set the cluster and pass. And it might not look like much, but we do have a fair bit of interruption. We have our X-Guard, which, since we have a normal monster in our graveyard, when the opponent normal or special summons, we are going to be able to add back our materiactor from attached to it to the hand and bounce any one of the opponent's cards, non-targeting. We have Dragster, which will be a spell trap card pop, and once it's done that, then we can use our Tristaros to special summon a Citri from the deck, and that will enable our Crystron Gandrax play, because Dragster will be a level 5 once it's negated, and then we can synchro off all of these into our Crystron Gandrax, and that will banish 3 our opponent's monsters from the field or graveyard, which is really good against decks like Fiendsmith for taking away their push and their follow-up. On top of that, we have Cluster, which when we have a Crystron synchro monster on our field, like Crystron Gandrax, it can pop 2 cards. So it's very favourable to do that in this sequence. But you can also use the Tristaros on field to make Alascalatus to make it the 2 pop as well, which can be really good against decks like Ryzeal for taking away their bodies. As well as X-Raptor in hand, which can be used for follow-up for another push next turn. Now for our next 1.5 card combo, we're going to see what we can do with just one Terrortop and a random card to discard. Terrortop has its own combo in Pure Crystron and other variants, but the bonus of playing Materiactor cards is that it makes this combo a lot more stronger and the ceiling's higher, as well as protecting from hand traps later down the line and forces them to come early. So we're going to start with special summoning Terrortop by turn effect, and then adding Takatombo from deck to hand. Takatombo can then special summon itself because we control a wind, and we're going to overlay these two into our X-Guard. From here, it doesn't matter what material we attach to use our X-Guard effect, and we're going to use it to summon our Zeptwing from deck. Zeptwing will add a Materiactor card from deck to hand, which will be our X-Raptor. X-Raptor will discard the random card in hand to summon itself, as well as add Tune Warrior from deck to hand. Again, it depends how you want to sequence this based on the rest of your hand. You might want to go for a Coral Dragon push, for example. But for here, we're going to say we don't have a Crystron card access yet. So we're going to link these two into our Cherubini. And Cherubini can then send our Smyger from deck to grave. Here we're going to use Smyger, banish it, to add our Inclusion from deck to hand. And we can use Inclusion to add our Sulfur from deck to hand. Now importantly, the opponent might be saving the Imperm for the Sulfur because it's really powerful at stopping Crystron, but because of the Materiactor engine, we actually have more bodies here than we would do normally with just Terrortop, and so we can make an SP here, and SP will help insulate our Sulfur from an Imperm. So we use the Sulfur now, pop in the Inclusion, and the Sulfur will be able to send 2 Crystron cards from deck to grave. These will be different because we still have our normal summon, and so we can make the Crystron combo more strong by sending different cards. So we're going to send Feisvern and Cluster. Next up, we're going to banish the Feisvern to add a Crystron monster from deck to hand, and that will be our Tristaros. We're going to normal summon Tristaros and synchro into our Alascalatus, which will add back our Cluster, of course. We're going to use Tristaros, popping the Alascalatus, and that will summon this time our Citri and our Sulfur. Now Alascalatus will reborn our banished Tristaros, and we have a few choices what we want to do, but for the optimal end board, we're going to go ahead and use Inclusion, banish it to summon back our Sulfur, and overlay these two to make our Nova into Infinity. And now we have a really substantial end board, but you need to know how to sequence it properly. So when we pass to our opponent, what we have is we don't have a level 5 Crystron on grave, so we can't use Citri immediately. Instead, what we need to do is use Infinity's effect to detach one of our level 5s like Sulfur and negate our opponent's card effect when they use it. we have SP, which we can use whenever we like to banish an opponent's problem card when they activate the card or effect. And from here we can use Sitri during their main phase or battle phase to reborn a Sulfador and banish the Sitri and the Sulfador to go ahead and make the Dawn Dragster. Now we can use the Dawn Dragster to negate a spell trap card or effect, and afterwards we can use Cluster to put back the Sitri into deck to pop an opponent's card. Afterwards, if our opponent still plays through that, we can then use Tristaris, chain it to an opponent's card or effect, special summon Sitri, and make these three, once Dawn Dragster is used, into a Querion Gendrax to banish three of our opponent's monsters on their field or graveyard. So yeah, that is 5 interruptions. The sequencing is important to make the most of the interruptions, so keep that in mind. And compared to a regular Crystron board, we had the SP Little Knight, which offered installation, but also another end board piece. But that is going to be it for the Crystron materiactor deck profile and combos. I hope you enjoy trying this deck out for yourself, and let me know how you get on and whether there's any potential tweaks that should be made to the deck in your experience, as well as any tech choices or adjusted ratios that should be implemented. Alright, cheers, bye.